Alright, so I had a request here to do a pick line spawn. Um, the request said that trigger box wouldn't work, or collision trigger wouldn't work very well for their application, so they'd like to see how a pick line would be done to create a spawner. So I have this basic setup here, FPS player, floor, directional light. I have this point, which is our pick point 1. I have this point over here, which is my pick point 2. The pivots aren't exactly necessary, but otherwise, if you don't have these pivots, you're going to have to find these positions manually. So the pivots make it easier than scripting it. And then we've got this floor out here, which has nothing significant to it. It's just a different color. And then this pivot, which is actually our spawn point. One other thing to note is I placed this guy under the floor. It's just a zombie model, and I went to his script and turned him off and gave him a floor. So what happens is as soon as the game starts, he's already there, but he's never going to do anything. What that does is it preloads the prefab so that whenever the first zombie spawns up here, there's not a load time to him. He just spawns right away. And then I only have to have that one prefab to do it. Anything that you're going to spawn in the world, you're probably going to want to spawn that way. That way it doesn't have to reload. Because it won't load anything that's already loaded. I've got these walls here. You'll see what they're for later. They're in part of the pick explanation. So let's just go ahead and run this. Let's actually run the video and show you how this is going to work. Alright, so I put a little bit of text on the screen, and as you notice, you can't see any of those pivots because they are pivots. Pivots don't have a model. And it says pick is clear because the line between those 2 points is unbroken. If I step into the line, that text will change to the pick is not clear, and it'll spawn a zombie. And there we go. Zombie was spawned. If I step in, there's another one. Now, I did not use an enter exit. I used a timer. So if I stand in it, for a period of time, the zombies continue to spawn. You could use a collision. I can set it up that way later. But this is the script. Okay, so what I did is I have a pick point 1 and a pick point 2. And those correlate back to these pick points. What I did was by putting this dash dash entity like this, I've said this in other tutorials, but we'll go over it again, it gets a drag box. So then what it can do is this pick point 1, which is this, you just drag in your entity, pick point 1, into it. And if you actually drag it, you can drop it in there. And then you put in pick point 2, and you choose a spawn object the way I have it set up. Actually, that's not entirely necessary, actually. I'll take that out, because that's not necessary at all. Originally, I was trying to load it directly from that prefab, or from that, but I did it as a prefab in the script. It works better. And then, so we have pick point 1 and pick point 2, and then I gave them position values, which are nil at this time. A spawn timer, a spawn delay, we'll talk about that in a minute. And then this pick text, I put this comment out here. Anywhere this comment is, all that's for is for the demo, and it generates that text on the screen that says pick is not clear, pick is clear, pick is not clear. Okay, so right down into the script. In the function start, the first thing I do is I set my pick position data to the pick point 1 get position. So it grabs a position of pick point 1 and makes it pick position. And then 2 is done in the same way. And that way I have these positions stored. And then we come down to the update world. This is where the pick's done. These 2 lines here are the actual pick themselves. You need a pick info object to store the information from the pick in, and then you need the pick command. So self entity world pick. So the world that the entity is in generates a pick. Picks are always done from the world. Then you give it its start point as a vector 3 and a stop point as a vector 3. I just use these self point 1 position and point 2 position because I already stored them from up here. Get position returns a vector 3. And then you have to give it the pick info name that you stored. And then you give it a pick radius. This is how big in diameter the pick or radius the pick is. Alright, so if we look at our image here, if I come over here and I'm looking at it this way, I have it set up to start at this point and end at that point. How big around is that pick? So if I make that pick bigger, it's going to actually detect the floor. I'll show you that in a minute too here. I want to go through the rest of this script. So this is the radius of the pick. And then I just put that inside of an if statement. And then, so what it does is if something is in that pick line, it prints this line, which is for the demo. You can remove that. All you really need is this part. Okay, so if pick info entity get key value. I don't know if I've done this before in a video, but basically the info that's stored in this pick info from the pick is this pick info. And then I want to know the entity that collided to cause the pick, or broke the line I should say, that causes the pick. I want to get its key value name. And what that means is it'll actually go to this block right here and retrieve this data from whatever collided with it. And then if that equals player, it'll move on to the next part of the inside this if statement here. What that does is it causes it to only if the pick is broken by a player will it actually spawn. I could show you what happens. That's actually a lot of fun if it's done wrong. If you don't have this if statement in there, I'll show you. It spawns like 1,000,000 zombies. Now this is a timer. Alright, so I set a base delay of 1 second, because remember, time is always done in milliseconds, so 1,000 is 1. And then I have this 0 timer. Alright, so if the spawn timer is less than the current time get current, that gets the amount of milliseconds the program's been running, then it will spawn a zombie. Alright, so then we'll do the rest of the timer here. This is the other part. So the spawn timer, which is originally 0, so the first time you hit it is automatically going to be less than. And then what it does is it gets the current time again and adds this spawn delay value. So that means that this number won't be less than this for 1 second. You could change this number to 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or just remove it. But once again, you're going to have a crap load of zombies coming after you. Because basically every frame the character is in the pick, it'll spawn a zombie. So like 60 a second. It's crazy. We'll do it here in a minute. It's funny. Alright, then we're going to actually do the spawning. What it does is I created a local, called it zombie. And then what I said was it was equal to the prefab load of this zombie. You can make it whatever model you want. You can make, as long as it's a prefab. That way it already has its script set up and it already has everything ready to go, ready to use. If you have other models and you want to make them prefabs, that's simple enough. I can show you how to do that later. And then the next line gives it its start command. So inside of its script, it'll run its start sequence to boot up everything, get all the variables set. and then it's going to set its position to the self entity. That's the actual spawn point. So the way this script's written, the script is in the spawn point. So wherever you put this point, regardless of where the two picks are, where the pick is being done, they'll spawn at this point. And then it'll turn the zombie on and enable it. And then it does the timer. And that's the end of that. This whole else statement is completely unnecessary. It was put in for the demo to do when the pick is clear, when there's nothing in the pick line. And then this post render is the same way. All that does is write the green text on the screen, blah, blah, blah. Alright, so let's go ahead and dump this junk out for you guys so we get a more clear script of what we're doing. Alright, and that one. Alright. So, if we realign all this stuff. There we go. Looks better. Alright, so now that we've gotten rid of all that stuff, we're not going to have the green writing on the screen. You guys have already seen what happens if I don't, if I run it like this. So what I'm going to do now is show you, if you take out this check for the key value name, any entity that breaks the line is going to spawn something. So if we run the game now, whoops, expected an end. Did I delete an if statement line? If. Yeah, I must have deleted a extra end there. Let's just give it another one. Okay. Alright. So now if I run up here, break the line and come back, see the zombie trigger. See how the zombies were triggering the loop? Yeah, that's not fun. Well, it is fun, but it's not what you want. And then if I take out the timer, and I actually did this first and I didn't think about it, this is not a good way. Yeah, that gets crazy quick. So we're going to leave in the... Well, I'll show you what happens if you... It's basically the same thing that happens if you don't have the timer. It's just they stop spawning when you back out. But, yeah, so that's that. I did want to show you one more thing. When you're using the pick line... oh, I almost forgot the most important part. Your player, this line in your player, it's in his start script. You have to change this from a 0 to a 1 in order for it to work. The player's base set pick mode 0, meaning whenever he's hit with a pick, he won't respond to it. So, but you actually want him to respond to picks now. So you have to set that to 1. And then I wanted to show you one last thing. You have to have a clear pick line and make sure your pick radius isn't too large or too small. Let's say this block here. If I extend it out, now it's blocking the pick line. So what's going to happen is if I start, the pick line's broken. So when I run up here, nobody spawns. That's because the pick line's broken. Wait. It did spawn. That's a little strange. It must be a radius out from that. I don't know why it's doing that. But yeah, the pick line's broken so it doesn't break here. So what you need to do is make sure your pick lines are unobstructed. Yeah. I am curious why that worked like that. I don't know a lot about picks, honestly. It confused me a little bit at first. I did a lot of research on it. That's why I took a couple days to get this video out. The only decent tutorial on picks is on Jorn's videos. Agrigor, he does the Project Saturn, but he also has a C++ line. And in that he talks about raycasting, which is what I'm referring to as pick. I call it pick because the actual call is a pick. If you call it that to real people that script and know what they're talking about, they're going to laugh at you. It's a raycast to them. But, yeah, so that is spawning by triggering a raycast. If you have any questions or if this was not the answer you were looking for, let me know.